So fatty acids are extremely important. I'm repeating here myself, especially omega-3s that your body cannot produce, and they have a lot of functions in your body. They are a constructive material for your cell membranes. So cells are full of membranes. Cell outside wall is a membrane. Then nucleus inside the cell has a membrane, and then mitochondria, the energy plants, so to say, of the cell have membranes, and all the other organelles in the cell have membranes. So if there is lack of omega-3, there is lack of structure of a cell, and that leads to deviations, to getting away from the normal function of your cells. And as you know, every single function in your body is controlled by your cells. So if there is lack of structure of the cells, there is lack of function of the cells, that ends up as symptoms, diseases, and irreversible damage to your body. So if you do not want that to happen, you may want to keep your fatty acids aligned. You want to keep your fatty acids at the normal levels, especially omega-3s. Why is it especially omega-3s? Because there is much easier today to get too much of omega-6, another fatty acid. And it's not difficult to get omega-9s, and it's not difficult to produce saturated fat. If you eat a bit of carbohydrates, you can produce saturated fat, or you can eat animal products that have saturated fat. So it's plenty of saturated fat in the nature and in your food and inside you. And there's plenty of omega-9 that you can get from many sources in the nature, and omega-6s, but there's very limited amounts of omega-3s in your food. And according to the tests, I will show you the tests a bit later, humanity today is living with one half to 1/3 of omega-3. So it's 30 to 50% only. And consequences of lack of omega-3 start when you go lower than 80%. So 8% of all fatty acids in the cell. The normal range is 10% of all the fatty acids should be omega-3s. If you go lower than 8%, you start having consequences. Your functions of the cells deviate from the normal, from the optimal. And if you go below 4% of the fatty acids, so which is 40% of the norm, you have a 100% likeliness that you will get some consequences and some irreversible damage to your body. And most of the people today are lower than 4%, which means they are getting the consequences, all of them. It's just a question of time when you will start feeling it, or maybe you already feel those consequences. So now, once those fatty acids are in the cell membrane, they influence their cell receptors, which means that you know probably that in the body there are a lot of signaling molecules like insulin and many other signaling molecules that signal. So one cell signals something to other cells. So let's say if we talk about insulin, there are cells in the body that produce insulin according to the levels of glucose in the blood. And insulin informs other cells to take glucose out of the blood because there is too much of glucose. And if cell receptors stop working properly, those signals may not go and may not inform the cells to take glucose out of the blood, and glucose may go up in the blood. And that ends up as damage to the body, and in the beginning it might be reversible, but in the future it might become irreversible. So, and many other examples. So hormones in the body may not function properly, and many other things may go wrong. Now, Also, omega-3s are starting point for making hormones that regulate blood clotting, so it becomes faster with lack of omega-3, which transforms into easier forming blood clots. Then omega-3 relaxes artery walls. So if you have lack of omega-3, artery walls may be contracted too much, which ends up as high blood pressure. And inflammation is increased because omega-3s are anti-inflammatory and omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. And most of the people have too much omega-6s in their cells and too little omega-3s in their cells, which ends up as too high inflammatory levels in the whole body, which ends up as the damage, as wearing out of the body earlier than your genetic pre-programmed age. So if your genetic age could have been 120 years or 100 years, you may live to 70 or 80 or even 40 or 50 or even less if there is lack of omega-3, which is, it sounds very dramatic. And some of you may now start asking, how is that possible? Because it sounds too dramatic. It sounds like, if that is really true, I should have known about it. I should have found it in literature. I should have found it in scientific studies. I should have found it somewhere. So, and there is a reason why today you heard of omega-3s, you heard of importance of omega-3s, but most of you never reacted to it. Most of you never took the omega-3 supplement. And there is a reason for that. Most of the omega-3 supplements today are dysfunctional. And that is the reason why most of the people are not taking omega-3 supplements. They know that it's important, they try, and they feel very little difference or no difference at all. And then they ask their friends who took omega-3 supplements, and those friends inform them that, yeah, they did not feel that much either. And then people share this information and they decide that this was probably not so true, or maybe it was exaggerated that omega-3s are so important. But the real reason was found with blood testing, with cell testing of omega-3 levels. And what we found with the tests, and now we have over 1 million blood tests in the world made in more than 100 countries. What we have found is that people who take omega-3 supplements, their cells have very little more omega-3s than those who do nothing, which means that the supplement was not giving a raise in omega-3 enough to produce clinical change. So that is the reason why most of the people are confused about omega-3 and have a wrong belief about the functions of omega-3. Okay, but let's go further. So with too high blood clotting, with contraction of artery walls, with high blood pressure, and with too high inflammation levels, this is a recipe for disaster. This is a recipe for stroke, heart attack, thrombosis, or many other things that may go wrong in the cardiovascular system of the body. And this is the main killer of most people today. If you look at the statistics, death statistics, this is a number one killer, 60 or more % of all deaths. And this is, in many cases, is preventable, but we have to do certain steps to make that happen. Okay, another thing, what omega-3 does, it binds to receptors in cells that regulate genetic function. Now, if you combine the two, wrong genetic function regulation, and on top there is inflammation, you may get cancer, because there is mutations of DNA of the genetic material in the cell, and there might be a very, very devastating consequence. So now this is the second killer of today's society, 20, 25 or more percent, which ends up in total almost already 85 to 90% of all deaths. And this part of those might be preventable. And then this is the conclusion. Likely due to these effects, omega-3s have been shown to help prevent heart disease and stroke, may help control lupus, all the inflammatory conditions, and may play protective roles in cancer and other conditions. My question to you now, because I don't want it to be just a lecture that I talk and you listen, I want to ask some questions, and I want you to answer those questions either loudly to the microphone or at least to yourself in your own head. Do you think Harvard School of Public Health is just writing those things out of the blue? They have no clue about it, but they one morning they just got up and they decided to write some lies about omega-3s so that they would frighten you to death. So, and what is your answer? Do you think this might be true, that they are just joking here? And I know that you got an answer in your own brain, right? And I can see Pedro here is showing a nonverbal language the answer in the yeah. So there's another source, the United States government. Now let's see, maybe they are joking about it. National Library of Medicine. Here's what they say, that the normal balance between omega-6s and omega-3s in the cells, it should be 1-to-1. It should be equal. But in Western ratios, in Western societies, diets, it's 15-to-16-to-1. And that's what we can prove and we can confirm with those 1 million tests. We find in Scandinavia around 11-12-to-1. In Germany, it's around 15-to-1. In Portugal, it's around 18-to-1 on average. So it's even further in the wrong ratio. In the United States, it's 22 point something to 1, and so on. And it's up to our diets. And now here's what they write in PubMed. Excessive amounts of omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids and very high omega-6 omega-3 ratio, as is found in today's Western diets, promotes the pathogenesis of many diseases, including cardiovascular disease, cancer, and inflammatory and autoimmune disease. This sounds pretty interesting. Harvard says the same what the United States government says in the Library of Medicine. Now, two very respected sources of information are saying that we shall do something about it. Now, there's another source. You can open Amazon and you can write omega-3 effect, Amazon, or you can go on Google and write omega-3 effect, Amazon. And here's what you will get. It's a book. You can download it to your Kindle, or you can send yourself a hard copy, a paper copy of the book, and you can read. And there are many, many pages of the book. And in all of those pages, the book talks about many diseases, and that lack of omega-3 may push you into the disease if you have inclination, if you are. So everybody in our genetic code, we have weaker points of the body and stronger points of the body. Somebody has weaker joints, somebody has a headache, somebody has asthma, somebody has something else. So we all have weaker and stronger parts of the body, so to say. And if you have weaker part and it's written something out of this list into that, This is where you are pushing yourself to have it earlier or even to have it. Because maybe if you had enough omega-3, you wouldn't have ever gotten that. You would just have the inclination, but you would never get it. So, and you can read the list and you can think of how many people do you know that already have those. And maybe you already have some of this list. So this is I invite you to read the list, to share it with your friends. And if they have something in the list, maybe we can help them. So how do we help? Well, first of all, what we do is we prick fingers, we take some blood, and we send those blood samples to an independent laboratory. Now, we do not ever want to have our own laboratory so that nobody would even think that we can manipulate the numbers. And also, we don't want to be in laboratory business and in doing the reports out of the blood, but we want this service to happen. So we found a very reliable laboratory in Oslo. It's called Vitas Lab. You can find it on vitas.no, vitas.norway. So it's a laboratory in Oslo, and it's a reference lab. Some labs are sending their specimens to calibrate their machines up to the numbers given by this lab. So this is a very, very reliable lab. We send blood specimens to this lab, and we get the reports with exact numbers of omega-3s, omega-6s, so 11 different fatty acids in your cell. So from this test, we know exactly what happened, the end result of all the fatty acid happenings, of all the fatty acid consumption and construction of the cells. And so the end results is how much of those fatty acids we find in your cells. And if there is lack in the cell, that means over the last 4, 5, 6 months, your diet was deficient in omega-3s. And if you have too much omega-6, your diet was having too much of omega-6. So we can see basically what's the end result of all your nutrition over the last 4, 5, 6 months. This is amazing. This is the first time in human history, probably, where this is possible, that you can test your fatty acids and you can know exactly where you are. And as I already told, that we have performed more than 1 million tests so far. And now if we look at Portugal, we are now in Portugal here with several friends on Zoom. We have made 992 tests, so we are getting closer to 1,000 tests, which is amazing. And the average is not very nice. So as you remember, the norm is between 1:1 to 3:1. If you go over 3:1, this is where consequences start happening in your body. And if you go over 9:1, this is where you are getting the consequences for sure. And so over 9:1, and Portugal is 18.3:1. So it's double, 2 times worse than where the inevitable consequences start. So now the question is, so what shall we do with it? So shall we test ourselves or shall we keep it a secret from ourselves? Because we can always choose. It's a choice. And as I started the presentation, is that different paths lead to different future and different today. So you choose your future today, maybe this very moment. And you may choose to do the test, or you may choose not to do the test, and whatever the reasons may be. It might be the financial reason, it might be some other reasons, but what are finances against life? So how much is your life worth? How much would you pay if you could live 10 years longer? How much would you pay if you could live much better quality life? So not just adding years to your life, but also adding life to your years. So in my personal value list, health is very high in the list, and I would pay whatever price. If there is any price, I would pay it. So that's my opinion. So you are choosing today to have the future of symptoms, of diseases, of irreversible damage, or maybe to prevent that, to have health, energy, good function of your body. And it's decided by you taking the test or not taking the test. So I personally recommend, I have already done 12 tests to myself. My wife has done 6 tests, I guess, or 7. Children, we have even the 2.5-year-old Aras, a son of mine, he already has 3 or 4 tests. I have to check how many, I don't remember now. So we are testing ourselves every year, at least once, to see if we are on course, because we don't want to go into the red zone, even into the yellow zone. We want to keep ourselves in the green zone. And as you know, with children, it's not so easy. They don't want to take the oil. They try to avoid foods with omega-3 and so on. So it's a challenging task, although we do it every single day. We make efforts that our body does not lack those ingredients. So now there is a question. So why can't I, after I test myself, why can't I go to a pharmacy or to a shop? Shops and pharmacies are full of omega-3 supplements. You can find a lot of different brands and a lot of different dosaging and capsules and liquid and whatever. Why wouldn't you buy that? Why would you have to buy something that is called balanced oil from a company called Zenzino? And the reason is, again, the easiest way to answer you is a test, because you can choose to buy whatever. You can choose, well, first of all, let's start with the fish. You could choose to eat more fish, which I would not recommend you to do because of pollutants, because of heavy metals, because of microplastics, of many other pollutants that humanity polluted the waters with. And now when we eat fish, we eat polluted fish. And then if we eat enough for the omega, for not to have the lack of omega-3 in the body, most probably we will find way too much of contaminants in our system, in our cells, and in our body. So this is not the way to go. So the second thing, what we can do is we have to take fish fat out of fish or out of algae for those who are vegetarian and vegan, because fish does not produce omega-3, algae produce. Fish either eats omega-3, either eats those algae or eats man-made food in farms. So in most of the cases when we eat fish, we eat farmed fish, farmed salmon. And by the way, only fatty fish from the north, from cold waters, is supposed to have high omega-3 levels. But if it was farmed, it doesn't have that much omega-3. It has more omega-6. And the white fish that you find in warm waters, so that you find here in Portugal, is a white fish. It does not contain that much omega-3 because the water is too warm for the omega-3 to form. So you can see that this is a very difficult task if you are trying to do it with fish. Now, if you do it with supplements, all the supplements are cleaned from pollutants. It's against the law to sell an omega-3 supplement without refining, without cleaning from all the pollutants. So all the fish fats, all the capsules of omega-3s, they were refined before they ended up in the shop or in the pharmacy. And in that process, there was a mistake done, and it was not corrected until those tests started to be performed to people. The mistake was that during refining process, the most important molecule that has to come with omega-3 into your body was lost, was cleaned out with the refining process. And it's called polyphenols. It's an antioxidant. It's a molecule that protects omega-3 from spoiling. And most of the products that you can find, omega-3 products on the market, they have no polyphenols in the product. And that ends up as omega-3s that are not so well protected from oxidation. And oxidation happens on the way, in your stomach, in your gut, and also in your bloodstream, which is not good for your system. And you end up having very small change of omega-3 in your cells with a little bit of a damage to your system. And that is not a good way to go. So what those scientists from Norway, what they found out was that refined fish fats, and if polyphenols were returned back to the omega-3s, there was no oxidation of omega-3s inside the body. So you can take that omega-3 and there's no oxidized omega-3 in your stomach, in your gut, and in the bloodstream. And it's up to the dosaging. You increase the dosage without any damage. You increase the amount of omega-3 in your cells. So this is what is balance oil. It's polyphenol omega-3 supplement. And polyphenol is the most important word. And sometimes I use this joke about the ice cream salesman on the beach where it's plus 40 in Portugal in the middle of summer. And if the salesman doesn't have refrigerator, all the ice cream is lost. So refrigerator is more important than the ice cream, correct? The same in omega-3 supplement. Antioxidant is more important than omega-3. So without refrigerator, you lose the ice cream. Without polyphenols, you lose the omega-3s. So now, if we start talking about our diets and what is the problem in our diets today, and so if you test yourself, you will see lack of omega-3. So let me share here several slides. One slide is about the nutrition thousands of years ago. There was a chance to have balanced and complete nutrition. Not too much carbohydrates in fruits, and there was no cookies, and there was no pastry, and there was no pasta and pizza and all the other carbohydrate loaded foods. There was good balance of fatty acids. There was plenty of antioxidants, prebiotic fibers, proteins, micronutrients, and vitamins. This is how our diets look today. It's way too much of carbohydrates. It's too much in fruits. They were developed that way to be more sweet because people buy them better. Too much omega-6s, too little omega-3s, too little antioxidants, too little fibers, and too little micronutrients and vitamins and phytonutrients. So what is the solution? So this is what we recommend to do to return back from the unbalanced diet. And I cannot say to balanced diet. Unfortunately, I would wish it would be balanced, but I would say to a better balanced diet, to a much closer to the normal diet. Because we still will eat some pastas and pizzas and cookies and cakes time to time, and ice creams and so on. So we will deviate from the course, but at least we make the efforts to return back to as close as possible to the norm. So balance oil is the polyphenol omega-3 supplement, which supposed to return omega-3s and antioxidants, fat-soluble antioxidants back into your system. So that's number one, and probably the most important in preventative healthcare today, known to mankind until this moment. Because many things we already know, but this is so far from the norm today that this is the most important task today. So this is what you do when you test yourself and you see that the test is in the red zone, or some parameters in the red and some in the yellow. You want to take balanced soil and you want to retest yourself. You don't need to trust in me. You don't need to believe in me. You need to test it. You need to test before. So it shows what was your diet for the last 5 months. And you need to test after 5 months of taking balanced soil, implementing it into your diet. And then you see where you are. So then second solution is xenobiotic, is the fiber blend. It's 8 different prebiotic fibers for the gut, for the good bacteria in the gut. And the third is extend, is micronutrient, phytonutrient, vitamin, and a long, long list of different ingredients that your cells are lacking today. So if you do all three, this is what we call Zenzino Health Protocol, which means that if you lack any of those three in your diet, which most probably is true, you are not on health course. You are on the path to trouble. So this sounds dramatic, but I'm sorry for this brutal truth. I always say that I have to separate information into two things. One thing is facts, and the second thing is psychology. So please forgive me for my bad psychology wrapping, because I just say brutal truth, brutal facts, without wrapping them into a nice, pretty paper as a candy. And there is another addition to the health protocol, which we call Protocol Premium, is Shafran, which has very huge benefits to your brain function. We call it spa for the mind, because if your sleep is not good, if you don't feel rested in the morning, it might be also omega-3s, but Viva Shafran can help you right away from the first tablet. And it's all natural. There is no side effects, no nothing. And you get better rest, you get better mood, you feel better. So this is a health protocol premium. So now this is what I wanted to share with you and today, and maybe you have some questions. I would be extremely happy to answer those questions. Maybe somebody wants to say something, maybe there's some doubts about what I explained, or maybe you did not understand some part of what I was saying. So please share your feedback here if you have one. I will stop the recording so that we will feel free to share our feedback.